Hello and welcome to The Surprise Truth, where a timely insight can change your life forever. We believe surprise truths are there to educate you, inform you, but at the same time change the pathway that you take after you know something which you cannot ignore. And it changes your activities and your outcomes. So we are here today with Jeff Cohen, who is the Mission Director of USAID in Indonesia. He comes with a wealth of experience of working across the rest of the world. Welcome, Jeff. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Sachin. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes. So, I have been following some of the things that you've been doing in Indonesia, and I do know for a fact that when you came to this country, there were several surprise truths that you encountered which you probably did not know when you were back home. Why don't you share some of those with us?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I arrived here in December of 2021, and was the tail end of the COVID pandemic. And I had visited Indonesia before, but very briefly. Once I got into my job as mission director for USAID Indonesia and started traveling around, there are many things I learned about Indonesia. First and foremost, Indonesia is not just Jakarta. There's vast differences between all of the different parts and provinces and islands across the country. And they're different, and yet they're unified together through one love of the country Indonesia, one language, which is Bahasa Indonesia, although there are hundreds and hundreds of different languages. And I think the surprise truth is that I'm very surprised to see how much Indonesians all across the country are proud of their local heritage, but also proud of the collective heritage, and a little bit into competition between and amongst different parts of that culture. Whose food is best, whose sambal is spiciest, and those are wonderful truths to learn as I travel the country visiting internationally funded development projects.
So, to a large extent, the work you do with USAID is furthering the engagement between America and Indonesia. Do you see any surprise truths there which people actually may not be aware of between the two countries?
Well, this year is critically important because the United States government and the Indonesian government are celebrating 75 years of bilateral partnership. I think that's a bit of a surprise truth. The United States was one of the very first countries to not only support Indonesia's independence, but also engage in a bilateral way. Over the course of those 75 years, so much great partnership and effort working together has been accomplished. I think the surprise truth is just how warm and productive this collective partnership has been, and even more so how we're building it to the future to become even stronger. And part of that 75-year celebration is what the two presidents, President Biden and President Jokowi, celebrated last November in Washington, is elevating this relationship to what's called a comprehensive strategic partnership. I think for me, the surprise truth is that although we're half the world away from each other for the most part, the people-to-people ties that bring us together, our share of democratic values and social values are things that bring us even closer together. And to me, that's a surprise partnership, and one that in the Indo-Pacific region is critically important to both nations so that we can prosper, we can become more just societies, and of course, demonstrate the love for our democratic values.
Yes, you made a good point actually, because the three largest democracies in the world are Indonesia, America, India. And there's a lot of commonality here about the values of democracy playing out in the relationships. So I want to actually now go a little bit about the work that you do here, because USAID has been, in the past and in the future, very ingrained with a lot of very high quality developmental programs. And I know you've been kick-starting many of them yourself while you've been here. Some surprise truths about some of the kind of programs that you're doing, because I think a lot of people are not aware. So would you like to touch upon some of the key programs you believe that are really essential to this relationship?
Well, I think historically, USAID began in 1961. We were started by President John F. Kennedy. But before that, the US government had a variety of foreign assistance programs. In 1961, they came under one roof, labeled the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Here in Indonesia, we've been here from the very beginning. And from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, our projects have evolved and become, we do them different ways, but always putting Indonesia at the center of things and looking for ways that it can sustainably develop and create more opportunities and better programs for its people. A couple of the surprise truths, though, are when I talk to people about programs in the past, I'm astounded at how many things we've been involved with. The very first toll road in Asia was built here in Indonesia by USAID called Jagorawi.
Wow, didn't know that.
And I travel it all the time, and I'm always like, geez, had I known that before I came, I'd talk about it more. But also there's some surprise hidden truths. The Jakarta Busway project that started in the early 2000s, a USAID project funded by USAID. We funded the design work and the local government did the construction. At the time, the ambassador, I don't think, wanted to talk about it publicly because it created a pretty bad machete. And so while for a few months the country was a little bit upset, or Jakartans were a little bit upset about traffic, it has become, a way to alleviate the stress on traffic. And the government of Indonesia, the local government, has continued to build on the success of that busway, making it longer and more inclusive of different parts of the city. But there's so many other projects. We were involved in the creation of the stock market. In the mid-'80s, when BRI, the big state-owned bank that is well known across the world for micro, small, medium enterprise lending, it had a bit of trouble in the 80s. And USAID, through a project that we funded to do some technical assistance with the bank, led it from a point of problem to a point of success in just a matter of about 5 years. And that's a behind-the-scenes work that USAID does across many sectors, whether it's in healthcare or basic education, higher education, environmental protection, sustainable development, democracy. These are all the areas that USAID has been working in since the beginning, but even more so since the early 2000s. And the 75th anniversary now is important, but there's another anniversary that's important this year. 20 years ago this December was when the tsunami hit Banda Aceh. And out of horrific destruction and an emergency that became a disaster, a lot of really positive things have happened in Indonesia because of the work that USAID, the US government, and other development partner countries have provided. But the resiliency and the human capacity, the ability for Indonesia to better prepare itself for the next emergency so that it doesn't become a disaster, I think is really a great story to tell.
That's capacity building.
Capacity building in the disaster risk reduction sector, in the response sector, in the reconstruction sector. These are all things that Indonesians felt in the aftermath of this horrific tsunami, and then started putting resources together to become better at how to prepare for and respond to a disaster. And now Indonesia is a leader in the ASEAN region in this space. And the U.S. government, USAID specifically, has been involved in this all along. Of course, in the aftermath of the tsunami, we built a teacher training college in Aceh, in Banda Aceh. We rebuilt a road all along the coast. But those are great, wonderful things. But I think it's really the human capacity that USAID has worked on with the Indonesian government, civil society, and the private sector all these years that is really the story. I'm sorry, I could talk about what we do.
No, I actually want to know more about what about your projects. What are some of the things you are doing right now, which may not be well known to people?
So right now, Indonesia is at a wonderful place in its history. It's planning for the 2045 EMAS, the golden, or the 100-year anniversary of being a nation, the golden anniversary. And the government is dedicated and ingrained in its culture, in its DNA, is how do we get economic growth happening in a way that supports inclusivity across all people and really brings Indonesia to that next level. And for us, USAID, our goal is to support the government of Indonesia, civil society, media, the private sector to achieve those goals as laid out in a litany of strategic documents that the government puts together. And now, at a point when you have a transition from one administration to the next, but with clear indications that the government is moving in the same direction, it's easy for USAID to plug in and support Indonesian government and societal priorities. For USAID now, we work on health, We work on environmental protection, conservation, sustainable development. We work on economic growth. We work on higher education, and we work on democracy, human rights issues.
Yeah.
And we do so through a variety of partnerships. We focus in on some priority provinces, but we tend to work where we are needed most. For example, our tuberculosis programs work in the 4 provinces with the most tuberculosis cases. It's a problem in Indonesia that, together with the Ministry of Health, we're working to solve. Currently, there's about 1 million new cases of tuberculosis every year in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And the key is, how do you identify those cases? How do you get people into treatment programs so that they can be cured? Because tuberculosis is a preventable, curable, manageable disease. You just need to know who has it and make sure that they're taking their medication on a regular basis and being tracked by medical professionals. So we're working hand in hand with the Ministry of Health in tuberculosis. We do similar things in HIV/AIDS, maternal and child health, and global health security, which became important in the pandemic environment, where we worked hand in hand with the government of Indonesia. We brought in vaccines. We help through local organizations get vaccines, shots in arms, in the furthest reaches of Indonesia.
Okay.
More importantly, now with Minister Budi and his team, we're focused on the health transformation and primary health care, making sure that where the citizens touch their public health care and private health care systems, that they're getting high quality care from skilled professionals, access at the right time, the funds are flowing in the right way, so all of these things can be done by government and the private sector in the most equitable and efficient way. And in the environment sector, we have a great partnership with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Most recently, in last July, we signed an agreement to work on orangutan conservation, climate change adaptation, and sustainable forestry. We work in the marine sector on conservation, sustainable fisheries. We work in clean energy. We're part of the Just Energy Transition Partnership, which is helping Indonesia envision a future where coal-fired and fossil fuel power plants can transition to renewable energy. And so we're behind the scenes supporting PLN and other government entities, the Ministry of Energy and Mining Resources, to achieve the vision of the Just Energy Transition Partnership. For years and years, we've been working on water and sanitation. Not just piped clean water into houses, but also upstream at the source, protecting watersheds so that clean water can continue to flow through the water and sanitation systems. And then lastly, in the environment space, working on ensuring that plastics stay out of the ocean, get recycled, and create a circular economy that helps people engage in the plastic industry in a way that reduces the amount of plastics out there, recycles what exists, and also provides employment for folks who are out there working on collecting plastics, getting a fair price for those recyclable plastics, and making sure that those recycled plastics get to a market. So we're involved in all that. I'll go through a couple more points if you don't mind. On the basic education work, we did a lot of work on basic education in the past, a program called Prioritas, which was highly successful and has now been replicated by other organizations like the Tonoto Foundation. But we're now in the higher education space, where we want to upskill Indonesians to prepare them for the world of IT, cloud computing, and we do this in partnership with organizations like Amazon Web Services and higher institutions of higher learning across the country. I was just in Makassar visiting Unhas, which is a premier university in eastern Indonesia, working on how we're building centers where students can practice using high technology to better prepare them for the job market. And of course, I was at another organization called UNM, the State University of Makassar, where we're doing cloud computing training with Amazon Web Services, a partner I know that you know very well, who are also working together in the BLK system, the Second Chance Vocational Schools, again, doing cloud computing. The figure that I like to point to that I heard from Amazon was that Indonesia needs 400,000 new IT professionals every year. And so we need to keep pushing students through the pipeline so that they can get those IT and cloud computing skills, make more money, and move not only the economy forward in their own career paths, but also find those startup companies that are the next Traveloka unicorn or the next Gojek unicorn.
That's right.
Because Indonesia has a lot of capacity and potential. We just need to keep upskilling, educating the younger generation so they can take advantage of the opportunities in front of them. Last thing I'll say,
Sure.
and I know I'm a bit long-winded,
Yeah.
but I'm very passionate about development and our work here. In the democracy space, we've just gone through a fantastic election here in Indonesia. I was an election observer and got to go see KPU's ability to mount the largest election in the world happened here in Indonesia. And watching neighbors work with neighbors as they funneled through the voting booths and celebrate democracy was really inspirational.
Yeah.
From my vantage point, it was well organized, small numbers of people, but large number of places where you could vote. To me, it was a great system. And now we'll go through a transition and we'll work with the next group. We continue to be focused on local governance strengthening. Because of the decentralized system in Indonesia, there's a lot of capacity that needs to be built at the kabupaten, the district level, and at the city and the kota level, and then of course at the provincial level. Sure. We work in about 6 priority provinces, and of course in Papua, where new provinces have been created who definitely need capacity building. And we spend a lot of time working with the Ministry of Planning, Bappenas, to ensure that the right skills are in the right hands at these new provinces and districts so that they can receive resources from the central government and program them in ways that help people.
So I think the surprise truth here is really the fact that the collaboration with America, USA, and Indonesia allows Indonesia to have access to top quality programs, best standards in the world. If you're looking at the startup world, the top startups in the world are in the US. And if you're looking at environmental programs, the source of programs are from the US. So Indonesia's close collaboration with the US does allow it to be very much aligned with what are the most important programs in the world of the highest quality. So I think that's a good surprise truth, that we are actually where the engagement is actually very futuristic and very much top-notch.
I agree, and just to highlight one key partnership is we have here recently, Chief Moore of the United States Forest Service visited Indonesia to sign an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, to work directly with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry on a host of sustainable forestry issues. And what that is a sharing of knowledge between these two entities that's going to help both Indonesia and America, the United States, advance into the future of fire prevention in forests, climate change, carbon credit tracking, and how you measure the impact of conservation programs so that you spread conservation widely and protect iconic species. These are all things that the United States does pretty well. Indonesia is doing very well. The deforestation rates here have come down under the current minister, Ibu Siti Nurbaya Bakar. And there's lots we can learn from each other. And there's lots of opportunity when you move around resources and upskill people and find capacity and share it. A lot of growth happens, and development is a surprise truth in itself. How far we've come in the world and how quickly we've come far recently here in Indonesia.
And I think the parallel here is that both US and Indonesia have got so many administrative sections, like you have the various states, and here we have the various provinces. So that allows for a lot of diversity and inclusion to come into all these policies.
And also partnerships. We're working on some partnerships with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry in what's called the Sister Park Program. Where we might have a national park in North Carolina engage with a national park in Kalimantan. These are programs we've had in the past, and we're going to bring them back to Indonesia so that we can continue to demonstrate how you can work together on big problems. And we always face a lot of big problems in the world.
So now, Jeff, we are on to the last stage, and I would like to know some things about you personally. The surprise truths that you discovered about yourself, starting from being a young boy, and you're still young now, but the career journey that you have had is tremendous, and I would say that you are among the top pinnacles of success in your area, and you wouldn't have been there if you didn't discover certain things about yourself, and some of those things could be very inspirational to some of our audiences. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Sachin. I have a number of stories in my life, but I'll give you a few that I think exemplify who I've become and who I am and who I was. When I was 15, I made a goal, and I think you always need to make a goal. And whether you achieve it or not isn't really the issue. When I was 15, my goal was I want to go visit 50 countries before I turn 50. I'm 53 now,
Wow.
and I've been to 39. So I didn't make my goal. I didn't achieve it, but I can tell you that those 39 I've seen and the things I've done in 50, or the time since I was 15, have been incredible.
Yes, can imagine.
The first time I left the United States, I was 16. And this is one of those surprise truths in life that you don't realize until later. When I was 16, my blind Uncle Lenny, who was 65, asked me if I would accompany him to England, Scotland, and Wales on a 2-week trip to be his eyes.
Wow.
Now imagine 16 traveling with a 65-year-old blind man
Yes.
whose wife had recently passed, and he had always wanted to see England, Scotland, and Wales. So he asked me to be his eyes. So I said yes. I think the second surprise truth about my life and everybody's lives is say yes. There was an old movie called The Yes Men where he said yes to everything and has changed his life in lots of positive ways. But I can, be honest. When you are offered opportunities, just say yes to them. Take it, because you don't know where it's going to lead. And that trip to England, Scotland, and Wales with my blind Uncle Lenny, where I spent time going from castles to churches to museums, on the bus, off the bus, describing what the crown jewels look like. At 16, it was kind of tough because, I would have rather been listening to my Walkman.
Yes.
But I learned about a couple things. Surprise truth. Disability is just an obstacle. It is not something that stops you from doing anything. My Uncle Lenny taught himself how to speak Spanish. He provided legal aid to poor people in the city of New York, and he traveled the world. So I learned the surprise truth that what people call as disabilities can really inspire people who are strong and active to overcome and really live a fruitful and wonderful life, as my Uncle Lenny did. So as I started along my journey from high school to college and beyond, I kept always looking for opportunities. I learned how to speak Spanish. I moved to Spain.
Yeah.
When I was in Spain, I fell in love with Spain. So when I graduated, moved back to Spain and opened a bar in 1993 in the beach called Rota in Spain. There's many small businesses, it didn't work out, and that's okay, because sometimes you need to fail to figure out how to succeed. And I think that's another surprise truth, right? Not everything's going to work out.
If that had worked out, you wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here today, absolutely. And then, of course, over my life, I did a number of things. When I left Spain, I moved to Detroit, and I was a salesman. Selling carpet cleaning in high office space, office buildings like this. And I learned how to sell products and services to a company. I can tell you that the skills I learned there, the surprise truth is how much those skills of salesmanship helped me being a United States diplomat and serving my country overseas. I learned, though, that I didn't want to be a salesman, that I wanted to do something else. So I went to graduate school in Monterey, California, and I started studying international development theoretically. While I was at this school called the Monterey Institute of International Studies at the time, now it's called the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, new partnership. I met 40 Americans that were returned Peace Corps volunteers, which means they had served the United States as volunteers overseas living in villages all over the world. Every single one of them said they would do it again. I think that's another surprise truth. Listen to people.
Listen to people.
When people have something to share and they're telling you this is a really good thing, maybe you should try it too. And I don't mean the negative things in life that can cause you trouble. I don't mean peer pressure. I mean positive peer pressure.
Positive things,
And so I took my graduate degree in international policy studies, and I applied for and joined the Peace Corps. And I was a volunteer in Bolivia at the base of a beautiful mountain called Illimani, just outside of the capital city of La Paz. And I worked on local governance strengthening with a local mayor, and we had about 98 communities all around the town where I lived, called Palca. The surprise truth that I learned from the Peace Corps was that I didn't really understand poverty and I didn't understand opportunity and the challenges of both. But also, I learned, the surprise truth I learned is we're all the same. No matter where you're from, where you live, there are certain things, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. I'm an American. That's part of our tenet of society.
Yes.
There are certain things that bring us together. Love, family, friendship. You have to survive, so there are some basic needs.
Yeah.
But once you take care of basic needs, it's about opportunities. It's about taking advantage of opportunities, about helping others,
Yes.
Find opportunity. And that's what I learned in the Peace Corps, that these folks that on the surface, for an American coming from Detroit, and I'm living in Palca, where I'm looking at something and viewing it as poverty. And then what I learned is, no, they have 6 cows, 30 llamas, 40 sheep. That's a very successful rural farmer in Bolivia. And, what I learned was how to learn from that experience and those people that could help me the rest of my career.
Yeah.
And as I transitioned from Bolivia to my next role, which was with Peace Corps again as staff in Honduras, where I was managing volunteers who were out there working with mayors in local communities, I learned to teach those volunteers to listen more and learn and see how things are done before you start to try to make change, because you need contextual understanding of the culture, the language, the politics, the religion of the world you're in. When you're a foreigner overseas, you got to understand context to be successful.
Yeah.
As I eventually left Peace Corps and joined the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and moved from Honduras to the Dominican Republic, eventually to Peru, and on to Afghanistan, where I spent many years, and then back and forth in Washington. I took those lessons learned from Peace Corps, from Bolivia, Honduras, that community development perspective, because I'm now removed from the community level, where I'm managing teams of people who are out there doing the community level work. But a few other lessons, surprise truths. And again, this goes back to just figuring, seeing what's out there and saying yes to different ideas. In the Dominican Republic, the number one sport is baseball.
Baseball.
Which is America's pastime. And I'm a baseball fan. I'm from Detroit. 1984 was the Detroit Tigers, was a big year for baseball and when I was a kid. But in the Dominican Republic, presidents, construction workers, doctors, and everybody can sit down at a table of dominoes over an ice cold beer and talk about baseball. That's the one unifying thing that brings all people from all walks of life together. And sometimes you have to find those things to move forward development. And so I partnered with the Office of Major League Baseball. I built a program that partnered between the Office of Major League Baseball, baseball teams from the United States, and Dominican baseball players who are professionals in the United States to do development work in their home communities. And it's been widely successful now for it's been more than 10 years that those types of activities continue. Similarly in Peru, I watched a movie once called River of Gold, and it was with the woman that made the movie. And it's about illegal gold mining in the Amazon, which remains a major challenge today.
That's true.
This very impactful movie that this woman, Sarah DuPont, made, and it had Herbie Hancock and Sissy Spacek as the narrators, and it's a beautiful film about this destruction of the Amazon, where folks are tearing up the forest looking for the tiniest flecks of gold. And the movie demonstrated how it's devastation to the biodiversity in the Amazon, but it's also poisoning people with mercury.
Yeah.
That movie inspired me. We started showing the movie at schools, and Sarah would do, this is very early on, video chats she would do with the students. And one day she said, Jeff, does USAID have any way to find resources to help me to do more with this movie? And I'm like, this is exactly what USAID does. I can't believe we didn't talk about this yet. And so we built a program with Wake Forest University, but based on the ideas in this movie. We started building this thing in 2012. It kind of got funded around 2015. It's still going today. It's a partnership between the Peruvian government, USAID, Wake Forest University, scientific researchers who are finding ways to get the mercury out of the environment, to reforest the damaged lands, and to really, move forward from this, environmental devastation. As I think now, my career here in USAID Indonesia, and I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. I did another study program at the National War College, a place where Minister Lahut is actually a graduate.
That's true.
I'm at the apex job of my career, and you said,
Pinnacle
successful pinnacle. I don't know that I believe that, because another surprise truth, and it shouldn't be a surprise, is that you stand on the shoulder of giants. No matter where I go in my career, the 30 odd countries that I've visited, the development projects I've helped start or implement or evaluate, the people that I get a chance to work with and lead, you never do any of this alone.
Yes.
You need to support others and be supported by others. You need to treat people with respect. You need to understand the culture around you. And now that I'm the mission director here in USAID Indonesia, and I look back and forward, all of those things are done in collaboration with others, in partnership. I think you always get more work done when you're kind to people, when you respect where they're from, when you listen to their voices. And once you get that recipe of success, you can plug it into any field that you're working in. If you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're a teacher, if you're a computer scientist, if you're, you name it. This model where you learn from others, rely on others, share with others, work together in common goals, in productive ways, so much can get done. And honestly, I think we can tackle the challenges that we faced, pandemics and disasters and climate change and inequity and human rights violations. These are all things that I think we can work on together. And in my time remaining here in Indonesia, I'm very much looking forward to doing more of that in partnership with the government of Indonesia, the people of Indonesia, the private sector, religious community. I think this is a great moment for Indonesia, and it really can step forward as it builds towards this 2045 Indonesia Emas and demonstrate how it can lead, not just inside of Indonesia, but the region and the world.
Yeah, so that is actually very insightful and inspiring. So the surprise truth for me about Jeff is that I always thought that he was a people person, but now I realize he's a community person. He cares about not just people, but all the communities and all the things that are around it that make things go round. So, Jeff, that was a fantastic session with you. I'd really look forward to an opportunity to catch up more with you on this, maybe on another episode. But for now, the surprise truth with Jeff Cohen, the Mission Director of USAID Indonesia. I hope you learned something from this, and I hope some of these timely insights can make a big impact to your life. And the surprise truths that you have one day you can share with us in our channels. You can go ahead and make some comments here, as well as you could engage in a conversation with the Surprise Truth YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and look forward to catching you at the next Surprise Truth episode.